And I'm Colleen.
We're two women who feel called forward to expand our consciousness through deep diving into esoteric topics,
Finding out the truth of who we are at the soul level,
and using playful creativity to connect to our inner children.
If you want to create a life full of abundance, joy, and freedom,
Grab your headphones
and your coloring books,
and join us to color your consciousness. Hello, and welcome back to the Color Your Consciousness podcast.
I'm Colleen.
I'm Kelly, and we are talking about
The dark night of the soul today. Why am I so excited? Because it's not a fun topic.
this is literally, I'm so excited to talk about this, but, this was probably, the hardest time in my life.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm I can't wait to tell everybody about it.
Literally, the most monumental time of my life was the dark night of the soul. Lots of shit happened, but it's for the better.
So let's explain for those that are listening and have absolutely no idea what we're talking about.
Yeah.
What is the dark night of the soul, Colleen?
So the dark night of the soul is essentially a transitional period where you go from being high on life, whether you're high on life or whatever stage you are in your life, the dark night of the soul happens. It's almost like a rug getting pulled under you as you're standing, and you just fall face first into the earth, and you have no choice but to just absorb all the dirt, all the worms, whatever you're landing on. That's literally what the dark night of the soul is. So it happens because it's almost like a wake-up call. Okay, it's essentially, to get more into that, it's essentially like an ego death. So when we choose to reincarnate on this planet, in this reality, as we go through society, we acquire an ego mask. Okay, so that ego mask, essentially, you can describe it as what everybody else sees, what you want everybody else to see. So the personality someone exudes, if someone is arrogant, if someone is loving, whatever that is all based off of the ego. So that is a mask they acquired in the Matrix. Now, the dark night of the soul is basically a death of the ego. So you're basically stripping everything you knew and everything you built up from that time until that particular moment. You're stripping that, you're killing it, and you're literally rebuilding a whole new mask, which is your spiritual mask. So in short, the dark night of the soul is literally your ego death. You're getting rid of your societal ego mask and rebuilding a spiritual one that's more connected to your higher self.
And would you say that people that are going through the dark night of the soul, they're already kind of going through their spiritual awakening? Or I'm sure it probably depends on the person, but would you say more often than not, the person that goes through the dark night of the soul is already kind of on their spiritual path and they're kind of open to these ideas already? Or is this what typically sparks the spiritual awakening for somebody?
I feel like it can go either way. Okay, we'll get into our stories later, but for me, it was I kind of dipped my toe in a little bit of spirituality manifestation because I was kind of raised up on it. So even though my birth mom was super religious, Christian, Protestant, she believed in manifestation, but you're manifesting through God, you're asking through God. And my dad at the time was Buddhist, and he believed in spirituality and stuff. So I was kind of brought up on that, so I kind of knew a little bit about it. But at the same time, I feel like it's either a wake-up call from where you are. So whether you either know about it, it's almost like an elevation, it's a step up from where you are, or if you don't, it's 100% a wake-up call to say life has to change, there's more to what you're seeing. So it can go either way depending on where you are in life.
From my understanding, the dark night of the soul is when all of the trauma, pain, wounds, and the distortions that you've picked up on throughout your lifetime, that you've just been unconsciously lugging around for decades, essentially, starts to come up so that it can leave your system for good. And as those things start to come up, because you've been carrying these things around forever. Like, these are things that have been stored in your body from the time that you were basically born, and all of the traumatic and painful situations that you have gone through in your life have been stored in your body, and they're starting to come up, and you feel the same way that you felt when those things originally got trapped inside of your body. And it happens all at once. So you're like, oh my God.
So it feels like you're dying. Like, literally.
It literally feels like you're dying. Like, imagine, like, for us, like, I was 23 when mine happened. So, and that's pretty young, I would say, for a dark night of the soul.
1920?
You were 1920. So that's 20 to 23 years of shit. Just like, imagine that you haven't gone to the bathroom.
I'm done.
In 20 to 23 years. Like, when the shit finally starts to come up, like, that would be...
You're backed up.
that would be so painful. But not only painful, but you would be, like, petrified.
Yeah, it's like a volcano, you know, before it erupts. I mean, at the end, you'll feel so relieved, but, like, in the moment, you are boiling. Like, it's rough.
Mm-hmm. And I don't claim to be, like, an expert or a psychologist or anything like that. So this is just my completely unprofessional idea of what trauma is. But what I believe trauma to be is just a situation happens that is way too painful for you to process and handle in the moment, so your body stores it for later. And we essentially have all of this baggage that our brain or our body thought that we weren't able to carry at the time, or we weren't able to, like, fully utilize when it was happening to us. So we just shove it down and we repress it. And the dark night of the soul is essentially our higher selves, or our brain, or our body, or God, or the universe, whatever you want to call it, being like, okay, girl, you're ready.
You're getting pretty backed up here, so we gotta shed this stuff out.
You're finally ready to face all of that shit that you've been avoiding for 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years. And when it comes up, it's like, it gets really, really loud. It's like it's coming up to die. All of that stuff is coming up to finally be purged out of your body. But when it comes up, it feels loud. Because
it's very loud.
You've been carrying it around this whole time. It's not like it's just coming out of nowhere. It's been stored inside of your body to some degree, but it's just getting louder and louder as it's coming up. So it feels like you're literally getting hit by a truck.
100%. And that's literally where the ego and, like, our shadow side comes in, is because we go through all this stuff before we even know what trauma is and stuff, before we can even understand what exactly trauma is. So we go through all this stuff, and based on that trauma, we develop certain characteristics, certain, what's the word for it? Character, or like
characteristics, patterns.
There you go.
Protective mechanisms.
Exactly. So, like, stuff like that we develop at an early young age, and that's exactly what makes up our ego. So your ego takes that and basically forms things around it so that you can go through life without you either experiencing that again, or like you keep experiencing until it basically releases it.
So you're finally able to heal from it.
Exactly. And that's exactly where our shadow sides come in too, because all the trauma we go through our shadow side is almost like, pretend there's like two thrones, okay? There's like a light and a dark. And your light side, obviously your higher side, but you also cannot neglect your dark side, because that's exactly where all your pain and your trauma comes from. They're holding that space for you. It's like they have a bunch of baggage around that throne, and they're holding it for you until you can come pick it up one by one to open it and release it and deal with it, and then work on the other one. So that's exactly what happens throughout the dark night of the soul. Is you're literally, some of those baggages are coming up, and sometimes it might be one, sometimes it might be 50 or 100.
Yeah.
So it feels like a lot, because that's a lot of baggage you've been carrying on for so long. You know what I mean?
So the people listening are probably like, well, this sounds fun, I'm gonna pass. But first and foremost, you can't really control it. It kind of just happens.
Yes.
And secondly, it's actually the most beautiful thing.
It really is. And like exactly what you're saying. If you're literally thinking, oh my God, like how can I avoid this? Like what can I do? I'm sorry, like there's no.
I don't want to deal with that.
I don't know how to burst your bubble, but let me pop it. Like you cannot avoid it.
You can't avoid it.
Once it's set in your cards to happen, it's gonna happen.
And you can resist it, and you're just going to get stuck with it longer and longer and longer.
Make it worse.
So imagine going with the constipation analogy.
I'm done. How did we get on?
Imagine that after 20 plus years of just holding in all of your shit, it starts to come out.
Yeah.
And you're terrified.
And
you're
like
what's going on?
Like, no diaper, you start shitting yourself.
Like you're like, what is happening? Like if you've never like went to the bathroom before in your life, you'd be like, what is happening?
Yeah.
What is going on? And you're like trying to like shove it back in. Like you're like holding it in as long as you can, and it's going to be uncomfortable the more you resist it, and of course it's going to be painful to come out, but the result of it coming out, I am just imagining shit now. I'm sorry. We're going to get off the shit topic, but the result of this purge, of the emotional purge, the dark night of the soul, is that, well, of course you feel lighter because you're no longer carrying around all of this baggage, and your true essence, your true personality, your true brilliance can start to come through, because the personality that you had prior to the dark night of the soul, in part, was built to protect you.
100%.
It was built to protect you from these pains and these wounds and these traumas that you never faced. And I also want to be clear on, trauma doesn't have to mean that like you went through a really, really traumatic experience, because everybody has trauma. Everybody.
Doesn't matter if your life has been like blissful princess. No. Everybody has trauma.
Everyone has it. And obviously some people have more and more extreme cases than others, but we all had situations happen to us that were bigger than we could handle at the time, so we repressed it and we carry it around until we're ready to face it.
That's right. And I think it's amazing how like our bodies keeps all of that shit for, it's like we're like 23, 24. Some people like don't even go through their dark night of the soul for years, like other reincarnations. So your self is carrying all that stuff for like hundreds, thousands of years until you're ready. I think that's so beautiful. So like when it happens, it's almost like you have to embrace it and just be like, wow, I'm so thankful that like my soul thought I was ready and I was brave enough to face all this shit right now. So you just have to embrace it and just literally allow it to happen. And like I think how you do that is by like, there's no quick fixed way to do this. It's literally one day at a time, because one day you can feel like death, and the next on top of the world, the next in between. It's literally meet yourself where you are every day through your dark night of the soul.
And I love that you said that like your soul, your soul is ready for it, because I feel like that's important to understand, is that like if it's coming up, if it's happening to you, you're ready. You're ready. No matter if you think you're not, you're ready on some level. Your higher self, your soul, God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, was like, now's the time to purge all of this stuff. You are ready to step into something greater.
Yes.
The frequency that you are vibrating at, carrying around all of this luggage, is holding you down, it's holding you back, and you're ready to transcend it.
Yes. Like, we know you're a badass, so show us how bad. Like, that's literally what they're saying.
Yes.
I love that.
Yes. And another thing that I feel, and this is my experience, but you can chime in too if you experience this too, is that, like, you start to question every single choice in life path decision.
Listen. Go ahead. Before I chime in.
Like, you just start to question, like, all of the things that you've been working towards, all of the decisions that you've made for your life, like your dreams, your goals, your aspirations, all of these things start to change. And I think that's because a lot of the goals and the aspirations that you had were developed to try to avoid the trauma or the pain.
That is such a great analogy.
And so now that the trauma and the pain is coming up, you no longer really resonate with the same goals and dreams. Even if you're not recognizing that this is happening on a conscious level, that's what's happening underneath the surface. And eventually you're going to come to terms with that. And for me, I didn't know it was happening when I was going through my dark night of the soul, but all I remember is just questioning everything. Like, I had built this career and had been working so hard for this life that I thought that I wanted, and then when I was going through my dark night of the soul, it was like, do I even want this? I don't even want to be doing this. And just questioning everything and just having so much anxiety and trying to figure out, like, what am I going to do if I don't want this anymore? And just, like, giving myself, like, constant panic attacks because I'm like, I don't know what to do anymore. Like, and for example, I feel like the most common thing that happens for people is that, like, let's say that you picked a career path, and that career path, this is just a really easy example to help you understand, was something that you chose because it was your way of receiving attention or love or acceptance by your family or by your peers. And whether you realized it consciously or not, that career path, that decision was chosen as a way to avoid feeling your trauma, to avoid feeling like you're not good enough, to avoid feeling like you're unlovable by your family.
Yes.
And then when all of this trauma starts to come out and get released, you're like, I don't even want that anymore.
Yes. It's like, exactly. Like, the ego's like, okay, so we went through this. We don't want to deal with that right now. So if you, like, let's say you are scared of money, okay, so, like, the ego's gonna be like, what pattern can we set up so that, like, she or he can be so secure in their environment that they don't have to worry about that. Let's find a job that you have to spend years working at, but, like, the end goal is that you will be secure in money,
rather than just in-sourcing your security, you look for it outside.
Exactly. When did your dark night of the soul start? You said 20?
Yeah.
23.
I was 20, so it happened like exactly a year ago, basically, is when it started to happen. So mine, okay, a little backstory. So at the start of my spiritual awakening, which was around May of 2019, I was kind of just starting my own business. I was really, really, really focused on my career and was really heavily leaning into what we would call masculine energy. And when I say masculine energy, it's not like male or female. It's just a style of energy that's, like, very, like, hardworking and motivational and using grit and grinding and just put your head down and push and get the stuff done.
Yes.
And that was really my entire life. Like, all I was focused on was pushing myself, waking up early, staying up late, working as much as I can, getting as many clients as I could, doing this and doing that and working on 1,000 different things. And that was growth for me at the time, and it was a necessary period of my life because it taught me a lot. But after doing that for about a year, March 2020 rolled in.
Love that.
And we all know what happened.
Exact date.
We all know what happened in March 2020. And it was really interesting. And I remember this moment very clearly. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm a personal trainer. I do the whole fitness thing, nutrition thing, all of that. And I do a lot of my, I guess, quote unquote, marketing on like Instagram and do posts and stuff like that. And that's where I put all of my content on and how I market my services. And for a long time, I had been, like I said, in that masculine energy and posting 6 days a week and just doing everything, going live every day, writing blog posts, making videos on YouTube, on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook, on like reaching out to people every day. Like I had a to-do list that was miles long every single day. Miles.
I'm done.
And I was literally just like, I don't even know what my fuel tank was at that point. I was just like head down, do the work, grind. And by the time that March 2020 rolled around and, you know, that thing that shall not be named happened, everybody in the fitness world kind of went into panic mode a little bit because obviously the gyms were shutting down and people were losing their jobs and not able to afford those like luxury expenses.
This was last year.
Literally last year.
How does it feel like 5 years ago, like COVID?
I know.
Oh my God.
So I remember like going on social media and all of the other personal trainers, coaches, fitness professionals that I had followed, you could just really feel the panicky energy inside of their posts. And everyone was talking about like, you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. Everyone was like, let's do the home workouts and how not to gain weight during COVID. And you got to do this. And here's how to stay out of the kitchen. And we're going to do workouts with our dog food bags. And we're going to lift laundry detergent bottles. And like, I'm not going to lie, guys. Like, I did it too.
It was like mass hysteria.
It was.
It was crazy.
Everyone was panicking. And I kind of let myself go down that path for a little tiny bit too, because I'm like, well, that's what everyone else is doing. So like now I'm going to post about home workouts and I'm going to post about how to stay out of the kitchen when you want to stress eat and you're stuck at home working from home. And that lasted about a week.
I'm done.
into the lockdown. And I remember it just felt so yucky. So gross. Like the idea of posting one more home workout on my Instagram made me want to puke.
Oh my God.
I was just done. My whole body was like, girl,
Kelly,
no.
Kelly, no.
I was literally like, stop. And I was talking to my partner at the time on FaceTime, and I remember saying like, I don't know what it is, but I just don't feel like posting on Instagram tomorrow. And he was like, then don't post on Instagram tomorrow.
Don't do it.
And I was like, I can't. Because I had been posting 6 days a week for over a year at this point, and I hadn't missed a single day. Like it was like a commitment, and I was terrified of letting that go. But my whole body was just revolting against me, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna take a week off. I'm just gonna, be a little bit kind to myself. Everybody is dealing with a lot right now, and I'm not gonna die if I take a week off of social media. So I decided, okay, I'm just going to give myself a break. I'm going to stay off social media for a week. I'm going to lean into, I'm going to trust this feeling that I have. Because at this point, I was really digging into spirituality and starting to kind of get a little bit more attuned to the whole idea of like letting things flow. And it's not about just hard work all the time. It's also about letting things happen and letting go. And I was really afraid of doing that at the time because I had been in that masculine energy, hard work, grit, outwork everybody type of mentality, but I really just decided to lean into it. And what happened was 1 week turned into like 3 months, 4 months of being off of social media, because once I finally let myself go even just a little bit, I tunneled down into this dark place.
Oh my God.
And that was the beginning of my dark night of the soul. was beginning of middle of March, maybe beginning of April. And that is just when I started to feel like there was this dark cloud around me at all times. And I mean, everybody was experiencing it. Like, everybody was experiencing, like, feeling really scared and anxious and depressed and everything. But what was interesting is that mine didn't have to do with what was going on the outside, in my opinion. Like, I really didn't feel all that, like, I'm just being honest, like, I didn't feel all that scared or that anxious around COVID and around my business. Like, things were I was okay. Like, I felt okay on that regard. So everything that was happening externally, it didn't feel like that was what was causing what was happening internally. But I wasn't able to explain it to anybody. So everybody just thought that, like, I was going through it, and everyone was asking me, like, are you okay? Like, are you making enough money? Are you going to be okay? Like, are all of your clients leaving? Like, what's going on? Why are you, like, feeling so, like, depressed? Like, what's going on? And I literally couldn't explain it. It just felt like I had a dark cloud over me at all times. And that's also when I started to question everything. Like I said earlier, I was questioning my career path. I was questioning my relationship. I was questioning my everything, like every single thing that I had learned and done and worked for in my life. I'm like, I don't even know who I am anymore.
Yeah.
And it felt like I couldn't control myself. Like, I literally felt out of control. It felt like an out-of-body experience. I had anxiety 24/7. I was crying before I would get on the phone with a client. I'd be, like, literally laying in bed, like, unable to move, just bawling my eyes out. I would pull myself out of bed, get on the phone with a client for 30 to 60 minutes, and then go right back and fall into bed and cry for another hour until my next call. Like, that was my day, like, constantly, day in and day out for... It felt like forever. I feel like it was probably somewhere between 4 and 6 weeks is when it was really, really bad. And the relationship that I was in at the time too, prior to all of this going down, there was no problems at all. Like, there was no problems externally really at all either. Like, I felt really secure with this relationship, and it felt so right, and everything was so good. And I just wasn't in a place where I felt like insecure at all or even questioned the relationship at all. It was literally like a blissful relationship. But all of a sudden, I started to just question everything and be really paranoid and really skeptical and really insecure out of nowhere. And I noticed it happening for myself, and I was getting really angry with myself over it, which just caused another layer of feeling like shit about myself when all of this was coming up. And I would just burst into tears out of nowhere. And it was just, I was a mess. I was a literal mess, and I couldn't explain it. And at some point over these months, I remember listening to a podcast. I think it was the Lewis Howes School of Greatness podcast, where he was interviewing Gabrielle Bernstein. Have you heard of her?
No, I have not.
So she has, like, a lot of books, but I listened to a few of her audiobooks, but I think it was in her podcast with Lewis Howes where she was talking about trauma. And she was talking about how she had stored trauma in her body that came up out of nowhere when she was doing some kind of therapy session. And prior to releasing that trauma, she had been going through this, like, dark period in her life where, like, there was unexplainable anxiety and depression, and she had no idea what was going on, but it just felt like a dark cloud was around her at all times. And it perfectly described what I was feeling. So I remember listening to that and being like, is there trauma that I don't know about that's, like, coming up right now that's causing me to feel this way? Like, that was kind of like, it planted the seed for me. Because at this point, I didn't really understand trauma. I thought that trauma was only, like, really, really dark things that happen to people, that only specific people, because I had a relatively easy-ish childhood. Like, we all obviously go through our shit, but I didn't think that I had anything that would cause me to be feeling this way or cause me to be feeling any negative way. But that kind of planted the seed for me, and I started to think maybe there is something that's coming up for me right now that is the underlying cause of all of this. So flash forward to maybe like the end of May or early June. I was in the midst of all of this, maybe like 4 to 6 weeks of just dark cloud. And I was laying in bed listening to music. I'm not gonna lie, I had a little hoid that night too.
I'm done.
For the first time in a while, I just remember feeling so at peace. I was laying in bed,
Love that.
so relaxed, listening to music and just feeling the vibrations of the music and just vibing and feeling like I was floating on a cloud. And I remember just thinking like, oh my God, I feel so light right now. Like I feel like the most peaceful I've felt in years in that moment. And then I got hit with a memory out of nowhere.
Really?
Yes. So, I can't believe I'm about to explain this on a podcast, but a little backstory. So, all throughout my childhood, I was incredibly insecure. I absolutely hated myself. And I just had this story that I was unlovable, that I was never going to be accepted, I was never going to be loved. And I just kept confirming that through the friendships and the family relationships and boys that I liked growing up, and just not being able to really attract good relationships, friendship mostly, because I was young, my entire life. And I just had this story that like no one was ever going to love me, that I was never going to get the attention that I wanted, that I was never going to be accepted. And then at 14 years old, I had my first quote unquote real relationship. I mean, as real as it can be when you're 14. And this boy was 2 years older than me. So that was like kind of like this, thing. Like it was like, oh my God, like someone that's 2 years older than me is interested in me. And it was the first time in my life that I actually had hope. The first time in my life that I thought that I could actually be loved, that I could actually be accepted for who I am. And then a little bit over a year into that relationship, so I'm like 15, 16, whatever, I got dumped. And we all know how horrible it feels to get dumped when you're a teenager. It feels like the end of the world already.
You're dying.
But in hindsight, I also see that it literally confirmed to me in that moment all of the stories that I had been living up until that point in my life, that I was unlovable, that I wasn't to be accepted, that everyone thought that I was the fat, the ugly one, the immature one. Like I was just never going to be loved or accepted for who I am. And that breakup confirmed that for me. Mm-hmm. And I was absolutely devastated. I was just instantly just filled with self-hatred. And I can visualize myself standing in my bedroom, just like literally like punching myself and just hating myself and wanting to die. And I had been suicidal up until this point in my life prior to this. I think like suicidal thoughts literally were in my mind like when I was like 9 or 10 years old. Like I was very, very depressed at a very, very young age. And all of this just washed over me when I got dumped. And it was like last resort, I went to my mom because I just really needed comfort. I was in so much physical and emotional pain that I just needed somebody to talk to. And I didn't have any girlfriends in my life at this point. So I went to my mom. And this was in the middle of the day. Again, I'm like 15 or 16 years old.
That's a lot. For 15 and 16, holy shit, the shit we go through. So
this is in the middle of the day. And my mom and my dad were both sleeping because my dad worked night shift. And my mom at the time, she was very depressed and basically on so much medication that she was debilitated. And I didn't really see her for 8 to 10 years of my life. And this was kind of right in the middle of that.
Holy shit.
So I go to her room, bawling my eyes out, just absolutely devastated, an absolute wreck. And telling her that my boyfriend had done me and that I hate myself and I want to die and I want to kill myself and all of this stuff. And she like gets out kind of like disoriented because she had been sleeping. And again, like I said, she was really, really heavily medicated at this point. So she couldn't function that well. But I remember just seeing her like all disoriented, getting up and shushing me because my dad was trying to sleep. And she's like getting up and grabbing her glasses and starts to kind of take me out of the room. And in my mind, I thought that she was taking me out of the room to talk to me. But I remember looking back at, like, turning around after I walked out of her bedroom door, and she shut the door in my face. Oh. And that confirmed to me that not only am I unlovable, but not even my own mom loves me. And that was the first day that I self-harmed. And I self-harmed for roughly 3 years after that. And although I knew all these years that I had self-harmed, I mean, I have scars of it, I knew that I did it, and I knew this story, kind of, but I never remembered it like this. And when I was laying there in bed in May, June 2020, all relaxed, a little bit high, this memory just washed over me, and I literally saw it happening. I saw her closing the door in my face.
Through your dark night of the soul.
Mm-hmm.
Holy shit.
Mm-hmm. And when that memory came up, my partner at the time, I remember I literally looked at him. I'm like, I just had a memory, and I feel like I need to tell you. Because I don't know what's going on right now, but like something, like I just remembered something really big. And so he sat down and I told him that whole story. And I just bawled my eyes out. Like it was like a full on like exorcism cry, like literally like shaking and like convulsing as I was telling this story and just like snotting everywhere, like so disgusting. And I remember waking up that next morning after having that memory come up and crying it out and just like really feeling compassion for that 14-year-old that felt so unloved. And for the first time, just feeling like that dark cloud was gone. And ever since that day, man, my spiritual journey has just like completely skyrocketed. Like I don't even know how to begin to explain everything. Like we can't go into it, like everything that's happened ever since that memory came up. But so I've started to connect the dots on so many things that were a result of that memory, that repressed pain that I was carrying around since I was 14 years old that I never dealt with. Wow. And it just all bubbled to the surface, and I was feeling all of those traumatic emotions and pain from that 14-year-old for like 6 weeks. And then when I finally was able to see it and see where all that pain was coming from, I was able to let go of that baggage. And I was so much lighter, and I realized why I do the things that I do and why I've attracted things into my life that I did as a result of that unresolved pain. Wow. And that's my Dark Night of the Soul story.
That is so beautiful, and I just want to say thank you for sharing that. Like, what? And like, that's so, like, if you think about it, like, how badass is our soul? Like,
yes.
Like, from 14, we endure so much freaking pain, so much trauma, and like we go through depression, we think about harming ourselves, we go through so much shit, Kelly. And like the fact that we're still living and breathing to like tell this story, or even like just keep enduring more shit.
Yes.
Like, because you go through that and then more shit comes. Like the fact that we're like, our soul is so like resistant and resilient to just keep going, I think that is so beautiful.
And our bodies are so beautiful for being able to store that for us until we're ready to deal with it.
Like how, like, amazing. And God knows how long, like, you've been carrying that for. Like, it could have been years. Like, years or, like, hundreds of years. Like, what if it was from past lives? Like, you know what I mean? God knows how long.
And that's the thing, too. I mean, for those of you who are listening who don't necessarily share the same spiritual beliefs as us, that's okay. But, like, from our beliefs, like, we believe that we, like, reincarnate onto Earth, and we also carry on, like, past life trauma and ancestral trauma. And when you do not heal from this stuff, when you don't go through that purge, when you don't go through the dark night of your soul in your lifetime, because your soul or your body doesn't feel ready for you to handle it yet, or you just resist it your entire life, then you're going to pass that on to whatever generation follows you. And luckily, in this day and age, a lot of us, like, on Earth today, are purging this stuff so that we are no longer going to keep carrying on this generational curse.
I'm so done with generational curse. Like, we gotta purge. Like, screw juice cleansing, screw yoga. Like, we all need to go get healing done and just cleanse all the garbage we've been carrying on from generation to generation to generation, and then go on your juice cleanse, and then go do your ayahuasca, and then go do that stuff. Because all of those stuff, it's not that they're useless, but it's like you get a headache, you take a pill, okay? It subsidizes it, but, like, let's say 4 hours later, the headache still comes. So it's like, it's almost just a temporary solution. So in order for you to literally get the full benefits of, like, all these things that, like, all the yogis or spiritual, quote unquote, spiritual people are, like, indulging in, you can have baggage, but, like, the very essence of, like, what creates your baggage, you have to, like, at least start working on it. If not healing it, start working on it. Because anything you do, if you have not worked on that, it's almost going to be a waste of time. It's like I don't know, like, it's like going in the shower and you want to shower, but you're fully clothed. And then you just let the water run down, and you're like, you get out and you're like, why aren't I clean? Like, that's exactly what it is.
That's a good analogy. And this is going to be a really good topic for another episode. We think we have one of our first guests lined up.
Oh my God,
who is actually an energy healer that just did work on Colleen today.
Shout out, Misty Girl.
Zentuary.ca on Instagram. She is the absolute best. If you live in Edmonton, you gotta see Misty.
Like, she is amazing. Like,
actually, if you live anywhere, you gotta see Misty because she does online stuff. So if you're listening and you want some bomb ass energy healing, Zentuary.ca, Zentuary.ca. This was totally not expected for me to be shouting her out, but she's just amazing. Like, she deserves it. And she's totally going to come on our podcast, and we'll dig a little bit deeper into energy healing.
She'll be, like, the perfect person for that. Yeah, I got healing done today, and y'all, do I feel like a new bitch? I'm like, screw all this shit that I've been carrying for 32 generations.
Oh my God.
Like, what?
So crazy.
Okay, so
let's hear your dark night of the soul story, Colleen.
Oh,
let's go. Spill the tea, baby.
Now that I think about it, we, like, all of us are badass souls. Like before I get into that, like, there's so many people. I feel like mental health, and especially, like, depression in itself, has been, like, it's so common. Like, it's almost like 3 in 3 people at some point in their life, whether if they recognize that it is depression or not, they have gone through depression. And the fact that you have these dark thoughts coming through your mind, and you are, like, still here breathing, even though you're not living your purpose, like, that in itself is a testament to how wonderful our souls are. And, like, we just need to, like, appreciate that about ourselves, because it doesn't matter what you're going through. Even if you're like, I haven't found my person, blah 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 blah, your soul's like, it's okay, we're gonna keep coming back, we're gonna keep doing it until we figure it out together. Like, your soul is your ride or die. Like, you know what I mean? So my dark night of the soul started when did I move out? I moved out at 20. What am I, 23? Okay. I moved out at 20. Okay. So before moving out, I had just like 4 to 5 weeks, a month and a half. I just broken up with like a ex of a year and a half. So from then, things started kind of like just falling apart. From then, when I moved here, I was about 10, 11. So then I haven't spoken. When I moved here with my dad and my brothers, right? So then my birth mom went a different way. So that I haven't spoken to her when I moved here since we came here. So like 10, 11 years. So that year, what was it? 3 years ago was 2018. 2018. So 2018. I found out I have older brothers from her side that actually found me, and that's how I got in contact with her. So I broke up with the ex of a year and God knows how long, a year and a half.
Wow.
I reconciled with my birth mom. Shortly after that, I started dating Henry. And the new year of 2019, January 2nd, I moved out into my first apartment. Mind you, when I started I got in contact with my birth mom about 3 months. Yeah, 3 months before 2019. So it was like around like September or October, around there, okay? So then once I moved, January 2019, the 2nd, 27 days after that, my birth mom passed away. So, and on top of that, it was also like, my second last semester of university.
Wow.
Yeah, girl.
Oh my God.
So
That's a lot.
is all of that combined into one, it sparked all the feelings that were happening. Okay, and I will give you an insight on what happened. So when it happened, I was moved out, and I was fine because I had Henry and all that, and it was amazing. I was like, oh my God, I have my own place, blah blah blah. And then that happened. So when she passed away, I was like shook. First of all, how I was raised, I'm not like that now, but how I was raised, my dad was very no emotions. Emotions are weak. You don't cry. You hold it in. If you cry, it's almost like a sign of weakness, and it's almost like you get punished for showing emotions. Okay, so when she passed away, I literally went to work that exact day. People thought I was freaking crazy. And now that I look back on it, I was freaking crazy. Literally, I was sitting there at work and I'm like, Colleen, what are you doing? But it was like I was processing, and I was like, am I allowed to cry? No. Crying is an emotion. Emotions are weak. It means I'm not strong. And I'm like, okay, can I tell anybody? I'm like, no, because at the time, him and my birth mom haven't spoken literally since the divorce. So I'm like, I don't know if my dad will understand. And if I tell her that she passed away, what if he's like, how did you find her? How do you know this? How are you in contact with her? And then that creates a whole thing. So I'm like, I don't know if I'm willing to deal with that. And I'm like, who can I talk to? And I'm like, nobody. I'm like, I'm just gonna keep it inside.
Wow.
And then I got home, and then something was like, you have to tell your dad. So then I told him, and he called me, and he was actually very, very understanding. Okay, he was very understanding. And at the time he was back home because my dad travels in and out of the country because he has a business back home. At the time he was back home, so I was with my mom. So my dad married my stepmom, but I call her my mom. So I was with her, and we were talking, and I released some energy, but it was still there. So from that January 2019, the 29th of January 2019, that whole year, all these emotions came up. Now, I will never see her. First of all, I will never get what I wanted for so many birthdays, which is literally to see her, to hear from her. I will never be able to talk to her. I will never be able to say happy birthday. I will never be able to say happy Mother's Day. I will, like, she will never see my grandkids. She will never see me. She will never see Henry. She'll never meet him. She'll never be at my wedding. Like, all these thoughts started popping in my head. And then on top of that, the biggest one was I can never, ever, ever ask her why she left and never called. That was the biggest thing. So from holding on to that emotion, I was like, okay, well, in a sense, she's a stranger, because Jody, which is my stepmom, like, I'm like, that's your mom. So your birth mom, she's a stranger. She's not your mom. So, like, you don't have the right to cry. Like, you don't know her. Like, she's a stranger. You literally don't have the right to grieve. So that's how I felt that whole 2019. And it was a lot, because it wasn't until... And, like, mind you, going through all of that, like, I was seeing my family and they didn't understand why I was going through, like, certain things, you know, and I was in a very, very, very extreme depressed state. And the last straw was when I got in an argument with my dad, and Lord knows if they're going to see this, but if they do, but I guess they're going to know. The last straw was when I got in an argument with my dad, and... that's another episode. I don't even know if I'll share that, but in a sense it was about Henry, and he didn't want me to date Henry. So because of that, it created a lots and lots of turmoil within me and my family, and so much so to the point where I felt like I had no choice but to, like, cut ties for a few months, literally cut ties. And in that moment, that was the last straw, because I was like, wow, I literally lost my birth mom like a couple months ago, and then now it's like my dad just died too, and it's like my whole family just left. And, like, the most, like, darkest hour of my being, I have nobody. And, like, growing up, it was like family's everything, family's this, da 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 da. And it's like the time where I needed to have, like, a strong foundation, I had nobody. And I get it. Because, you know, I was raised to not show emotion and stuff, I didn't even know how to communicate emotion. So I was going through all this stuff, and I also didn't want to bother, like, my mom at the time. I didn't want to be like, oh my God, I feel these things for my birth mom. So then I didn't want her to be like feel uncomfortable, to be like, I don't know, like, would she think, oh my God, why is she thinking about that? I'm her mom. Like, you know, I didn't want to put anybody in an uncomfortable situation. Plus, I felt almost redundant talking about it. I felt like by the time I went through all that, I felt like I should have been done with the grief already. So I felt like the time for me to grieve was past. And because I didn't take that time, I had no reason to grieve now, because that time is past. So... with that being said, when I cut off my dad and stuff, that was the last straw. I was like, wow. So literally nobody cares. And mind you, I was dating Henry. God bless his soul, because he was a godsend. And, like, looking back now, like, honestly, if I didn't have Henry, I probably would not be here. Like, 100% would not be here, because... like, it was like, it felt like I was basically just a zombie through the matrix, like, through this reality. It was like I was just going through things, like, day to day, and I was thinking about things, like, 24/7, like, why did this happen to me? Like, why, when I literally was about to get my answers, she passed away? And on top of that, why did I have to cut my family ties off? Like, why didn't they just let me grieve? Why didn't they just, like, push more, you know? Why didn't they, like, just believe me when I said that, oh my God, no, Henry's a good person? Why didn't they push? Like, why didn't they just allow me to just experiment instead of putting, like, their ideas and their beliefs in me? And on top of that, I'm like, why was I forced to literally cut them off? Like, the whole, like, the soul, I guess, what's the word for it? It's not protection, relationship. The still foundation that I had, why did I have to literally just drop that to make myself have nothing? So I'm like, in that point, I'm like, well, does anybody care? And I was just started dating Henry, and Henry, like I said, he's a godsend, and every day he's like, I'm here for you, blah 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 blah. But when you are like in such a dark place, you don't even recognize the people that are there for you.
You don't trust it.
You really don't. And it's like they're just talking, but you choose to focus on the dark cloud. So I'm like, he's just lying. I'm pretty sure he's gonna leave like everybody else. So then I'm like, well, then if that's the case, why am I here? Like, my mom just died, and my dad feels like he just died too, along with my mom and my siblings. Like, I have no contact to anybody, and I'm going through all this shit. Why the fuck am I here? Like, why am I here? Like, so if I die right now, who the fuck is gonna give a shit? I'm like, nobody, because they're basically all dead. I cut ties. So why am I here? I have no reason of being on this planet. Those are the thoughts that were going through my head. And it was one day, actually, I don't even remember, but it was one day I texted Henry and my friend at the time, and I was like, I don't feel good today, and I'm like in a very like destructive place. And I said, so I'm gonna go for a drive. And I said that, and it's almost like I said that to keep me accountable, because I'm the type of person, I'm telling you right now, obviously that's not going to happen, but I said, they say if somebody tells you that they want to harm themselves, it means that it's not attention, but they're actually asking for help.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it was, because I'm literally the type of person that, like, if I wanted to do anything, I would have done it, and I literally wouldn't have told anybody, because I'm that type of person. Like, I would have just went on with my day, drove it off, and like probably like drove off a fucking cliff, like literally. And that's what was going through my head. So I was driving down the Boyne Mud, and I went and I parked, and I was like, what's to stop me from just literally running into something right now and just calling it a day? Like, so those thoughts were going through my head, and I was like, you have to stop the car, stop the car. And I was like, why? I'm like, why soul? I was like, why are you so resistant to me dying? I'm like, why? I'm like, I don't want to be here anymore. And it just kept, I just kept hearing, just keep going.
You were fighting with yourself.
I was literally like, I wanted to go, and like it was like this darkness that was taking over me, and I wanted to go. I didn't want to be here anymore, and there was just a little void. It got like, it got faintish as I went, but that little voice was still there. It's like, just keep going, just one more day. Now that I think about it, bitch, you said one more day like 365 times. But it worked. I'm done. And I kept going, and then Lord knows how I got, actually, and that's why I started like my podcast. I'm like, if I'm not going to talk to anybody, I might as well talk to strangers. And like, I might as well talk to strangers and tell my story, and that helps a lot. And then I started reading books and getting into spirituality, and I 100% owe it to spirituality, and like learning about the dark night of the soul, actually, like with me being in it, like reading the book. It was called the Lightworkers book. Reading that actually like made me feel like I wasn't crazy, like this was happening for a reason, and even though I had bad days, it was gonna pass, and that this was needed. And it was a lot, because it didn't actually stop until like 2020, like mid 2020. It didn't stop. So it was about like a year and a half of like just darkness. And I truly can say that it wasn't until like this year. So like my mom passed away 2 years ago, and since 2019, so since that year, every like death anniversary or whatever, I would just be in, like, just consumed by this grief, and I'm like, all these feelings would come up again. And it was literally this year that like, it's almost like I didn't forget, but it's almost like when I realized it was like, it didn't have that same impact on me. So it actually wasn't until like January this year that I started feeling like oh my God, like I am living, and I literally don't want to go anywhere, and I'm perfectly okay with that. And I went through like 2018, like end 2018, 2019, 2020, all that. I went through all those days. It's almost like it felt like I couldn't catch a break. So it's like push one more day, and I push, something great happens. And then literally it feels like 2 or 3 days later, I'd be back down in that like horrible mood. And then I'm like, well, why am I here? Or like, I'm like going through something. Because it was also like the year where I was finishing off paying like me being scammed and stuff. So like it was like just letters on top of letters, and I'm like, Colleen, you can literally end this, just kill yourself. That's literally what I thought. That's literally what went through my head for like so long. Where like anytime I had a fight with Henry, I had a fight with like my sister, I had a fight with like my friend at the time, like anytime I had, I'm like, nobody cares, just end it. Like literally, like you're like, you don't want to exert energy into fighting, into like talking with them, into arguing, just literally just kill yourself. That's literally what's going through my head. So like this is literally the first year that like things can go like as awful as they can, and I can truly say that like I'm not gonna be like, Colleen, kill yourself. I'm gonna be like, bitch, we're pushing through this. So like that was very monumental, and it was also missing because I released that grief that I was carrying from my mom because of Misty. Shout out to you. So that in itself was my dark night of the soul. It was very dark. It was very alone. But it was 100% necessary.
Yes. And that's the thing. It has to happen for your highest good.
It really did.
And like it sounds like you were also kind of dipping your toe into spirituality before the dark night of the soul. And I had kind of been on my spiritual path of trying to manifest things and trying to create my reality and trying to create my dream life. But the thing is that it wasn't working. I was trying so hard to change my life and to get to a place where I felt happy, where I felt abundant, where I had everything that I wanted in my life. But I was trying to create that with all of this baggage weighing me down.
Yeah.
And the dark night of the soul allows you to purge all of the stuff that's standing in the way of your manifestations and you creating the life of your dreams.
It's really a purge, and honestly, it can last for however long. And I honestly think it wouldn't have lasted that long if I wasn't resisting. Because I am like the queen of resistance. I was anyways now, and I learned how to just flow this year. And it's only been like 3 months into 2021, and it's crazy because it's like the things I'm learning this year is like, wow, life is really not supposed to be that hard. But I was really the queen of resistance. That's why it took so long, and that's why I didn't like release it until probably this year. But like I don't even know, like how would you explain like just allowing it and just taking it day by day and just flowing with it, instead of like, what would like be an example of resistance and what would be an example of like you allowing it?
So this is something that I learned in the certification program that I'm taking right now. And essentially, when we judge something, so we judge an emotion, for example, or we judge how we're feeling, we're actually ironically stuck with it because we're giving it our energy and we're in resistance to what is rather than just allowing it to be there.
Love that. And
we have quote unquote bad emotions, and when those emotions come up, sadness, anger, grief, anxiety, stress, fear, when these come to the surface, we think that they're quote unquote bad, so we judge them, we resist them, and we try to get away from them rather than actually just feeling them, because we have these emotions for a reason. They're trying to show us something.
Yes.
And there's actual science to show that it only takes 90 seconds for an emotion to actually move through your body and release.
100%.
Unless you judge it, unless you resist it, 100%. Unless you repress it, and then you're stuck with it. So when you're going through the dark night of the soul and you're having all of these stored traumas and pains and wounds and quote unquote bad emotions bubbling up to the surface all at once, it's so painful that you resist it, that you try to run away from it. You think that it's bad. You think that this shouldn't be happening, but it should be. It should be happening because it is. And you thinking that you shouldn't be feeling this way is you resisting what is you being at war with what's happening. And the longer that you're at war with what's happening, the longer it's going to stay.
I just got a download. So it's like 100% what you're saying. So for example, like, this is an exercise that I 100% think could have helped me. 100%. And I use it on, actually you use it on Henry too, but when, let's say you get a feeling of, I want to die, or nobody loves me, write it down. Write down, I want to die, or nobody loves me. And then write down, is this true? Yes or no? If it's yes, write down, why is it yes? If it's no, then you stop right there. But let's just entertain the thought of, I want to die and nobody loves me. Do I want to die? Yes. Nobody loves me? Yes. Okay. Why do you think, like, is there any proof to the fact that nobody loves you?
So this is actually the work of Byron Katie. So I learned this by the woman is named Byron Katie. So she has what's called The Work. It's literally called The Work, and it's a self-inquiry process to basically investigate your stressful thoughts. So exactly what Colleen is saying, we can use the example of nobody loves me. That's the thought that you have that's causing you to feel all of this pain. So like Colleen said, the first question that you ask yourself is this true? And you really just honor your truth. Like if it is true for you in that moment, you can say yes. Just honor that. But if the answer is no, that's also great. Then you're going to move on to question 3. But if your answer was yes, the second question is, can you absolutely know, without a shadow of a doubt, that that's true?
There you go.
And you need to find proof outside of your mind. How do you know that that's true? And it still might be true for you, and that's okay. Honor your truth, like I said. But the third question is, what happens when you believe that thought? What happens when you believe that nobody loves you? You self-destruct. You self-harm. You cut people off. You're very skeptical of other people. You don't let people in. Just think of all of the ways that believing nobody loves you shows up in your life. How do you treat yourself? How do you treat other people? What addictions or obsessions come to the surface when you believe that nobody loves you? And then the fourth question is, who would you be without the thought that nobody loves me? Who would you be? What would be different? Just close your eyes and put yourself into the environment of you having the thought, nobody loves me. Just imagine a time where you had that thought triggered. Maybe you were around certain people. Maybe you're in a particular room. Just close your eyes and put yourself there. Who would you be in that moment, in the presence of those people, without the ability to think the thought, nobody loves me? And then the last part of the work by Byron Katie is the turnarounds. And that's where you find all of the opposites of the statement. So in this case, an opposite would be, everybody loves me. And then you just try that on. You try it on like you're at Foot Locker just trying on shoes. Everybody loves me. Does that feel just as true, if not truer, than the original statement? What evidence can you find to support the belief that everybody loves you? You could also say that nobody hates me. That would be another opposite. And then you would find proof for that and just try it on. It might not feel true, but you just investigate whether or not that turnaround feels just as true, if not truer, than the original.
But you 100% prove yourself wrong. That's literally what it is. And I feel like if I would have known that, I 100%, it would have helped the flow go much easier.
The work by Byron Katie is literally life-changing. I use it with all of my clients. I use it on myself. It's just a way of living now that allows you to investigate the thoughts that you just unconsciously buy into that are resulting in all of your stress and sadness and anger, so that you can release those emotions much easier.
Yeah, you used it on Henry too.
Yeah, it's really good. Shout out Byron Katie at thework.com.
Love that.
So, for anybody that's listening that right now or in the future goes through a dark night of the soul, what is one piece of advice that you would give them?
Me? Honestly, I would say, like, something I wish somebody would have told me is that you are not crazy. You are not crazy. Everything you're feeling right now is 100% valid. Even if you feel like you want to die, you just own that. So if you want to die, you own that, and you just be in that, because whatever you're feeling, your body needs to experience in that moment. But that doesn't mean you're crazy. And on top of that, life is for sure 10 times more beautiful, even not like 100 times more beautiful once you get through it. And like that little faintish voice was telling me, just take it day by day and just meet yourself where you are every day. If you feel so good that day, be in that moment. If you feel so low that day, be in that moment. But the best thing you can do for yourself is keep going, because the minute you give up on yourself, that little voice gives up on you too.
I love that. That's so beautiful.
What about you?
The first thing that came to mind was to remember that it's happening for you. And I mean, that's true. Like, I love the quote, life is happening for you, not to you.
Yeah.
But what I actually wish that I would have known when I was going through my dark night of the soul is that I don't need to know why it's happening right now.
Yes.
Because I was so caught up in like, what is going on? What's happening? Why am I like this? What's wrong with me? And just trying to get to the root of it, to the point where I was just like obsessed with trying to figure out what was wrong with me. And it wasn't helping.
Exactly.
It wasn't helping at all, and it was just making me feel even worse. And like I said, when you judge something, you're stuck with it. So you don't need to figure out why it's happening. You don't need to get to the root of what childhood trauma is coming to the surface right now. You really just need to let it run its course and just trust that it's going to reveal itself to you when the time is right.
100%. I love that. And that's literally exactly meeting your body where it's at every day and not trying to find the answers. You're just accepting where you're at. I love that.
Oh my God.
This was such a great episode.
I hope that everybody listening to this got some value from this.
Yes. Let us know. I love how like this is literally perfect, because I don't know if I could have told that story without breaking down.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking the same exact thing. Because when I had that memory come up, I like I said, I told my partner like immediately, because he was there when the memory hit me in the face, and bawled my eyes out. And then I told my therapist that I was seeing at the time, maybe a week later, I told her the story, and I also got choked up and started bawling my eyes out as I was saying it. It was so raw to be talking about it, and now it's just like I can tell that I'm healed from it now, that I've transcended the pain and fully purged it, because I'm able to speak about it.
And not break down. Oh my God. Like, that's 100% growth. I did not want to talk about like any of that for years and years and years. Because it's like, and it takes a lot, because you're not just telling the story, you're reliving it.
Yeah.
You're literally putting yourself back in that moment, back in that pain, back through that trauma. So it's like, it's a lot that comes up.
So you know that you're healed from it when you can talk about it without it triggering that same pain, because that pain is no longer living inside of your body.
Exactly. I love that for us.
I love that for us too.
Claps for Kelly and Colleen.
So cute. Well, guys, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this, please, it would support us so much if you would just take like 60 seconds out of your day to go to Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to this on and give us a 5-star rating and a review. It's a really, really easy and free way to support us and the time that we're putting into this passion project of ours.
That's right.
And
don't forget to share it as well if it helped you. Share it, like share with somebody you think it can help as well.
I love that. Yes. And you can find us on Instagram, me at Kelly Lifts and Colleen
at _Black Alchemist.
And we also have our podcast Instagram, which you can find at Color Your Consciousness.
That's right.
Thanks for listening.
Bye, guys.
Bye.